The bile rose in her throat and she turned away, retching into a fold of her cloak. She fought back the urge to vomit, breathing into the thick wall until the nausea subsided. It was all she could do to keep her hands from shaking violently as she set the heavy lock down softly and moved on to the next troll. She repeated the operation without a hitch. As she removed the third troll's padlock, however, her foot caught on a loose chain and she gasped as she lost her footing. The padlock flew from her hands and crashed against the floor with a horrible clang. Faintly she heard Bruckner curse, and then the sound of sudden fire. As if in a nightmare, Nima's eyes rose from the still ringing padlock to the face of the troll directly before her. His eyes opened slowly, the thick mucus-colored orb striving to find something to look at. He saw Nima, and his lips parted to make way for a terrible roar. She ran. Pivoting, Nima pulled her dagger from its boot sheath and sprinted for the main cavern, leaping over a length of chain whipped into sudden violent motion by a troll discovering his new freedom. All awake now, the other trolls added their voices to the bellow of the first. The sonic force of their fury felt like a tangible blast of energy at Nima's back, echoing through the small sub-cavern and rolling out into the wider cave. She leapt over the splayed legs of the second troll and rolled as she landed, only just evading a giant fist brought down to smash against the slate floor. By the time she reached the gate, she could already hear heavy footfalls behind her pounding into the thick rock. She burst through the open portal and cut right at the wall. The barrier was already burning, all save a 3-foot gap. She leapt through to find Bruckner and Tadalak waiting. As soon as she was safely on the other side of the firewall, they shoved a pile of boxes into the breach, Tadalak lighting them with a wave of flame from his fingertips. As the wall began to burn in earnest, 3 trolls burst forth from their enclosure, roaring so loudly that it seemed the whole place must cave in. The largest began to stomp heavily towards the burning barrier, smashing one of his fellow trolls in the face with a backward swinging fist as he searched furiously for a target to vent his anger on. As the flames grew to an inferno, the beast put an arm over his eyes, roaring in pain. Desire and rage seemed to beckon him forward, but fear proved the stronger driver. He smashed about impotently for a moment, striking the floor mightily with fists the size of small boulders, but all to no avail. Finally, he turned in frustration, the other 2 following his lead, and they began racing down the cavern towards the entrance, their roars echoing like thunderclaps. They disappeared up the pathway to the outside world, and soon the sounds of their passage had faded, and all was silent save for the raging of the remaining troll, still locked in his chains.
Let's have a look around in the cage. Then we should continue down into the cavern, after the king.
One troll remains locked up. We could probably dispatch it if you 2 are so inclined, and then continue on our way.
Trolls cannot be killed with steel alone. We'll need fire or acid to keep the thing from regenerating.
It'll be an ugly business, but we had better have done with him,
Nima said, grimacing. Here, carry these, Ox. Tadalak chimed in, dragging several of the large liquor-filled animal skin canteens to Bruckner's feet. It won't be very sporting, I'm afraid. They entered the small cave and considered the remaining troll. Over 12 feet tall and hunched up against the far wall, eyeing them with hateful eyes, the troll was muttering strange, nonsensical phrases, its voice like crunching gravel. Okay, Ox, Tadalak said. Douse him. Bruckner unstoppered the wineskins and, getting as close as he dared, sprayed the liquor onto the troll's face and chest. Tadalak snapped his fingers, and a shower of thick, flaming sparks fell over the restrained troll. The sparks lit the alcohol and then burrowed into the troll's flesh, setting the fire deep within the hard, root-like muscles of the creature. The 3 companions covered their faces as the troll caught fire. Soon they were gagging on the fumes. Its screams were nearly as terrible. The fire spread across its entire body, and it thrashed and raged and bellowed as its skin melted and its sinews baked and snapped.
I'll check around!
Nima shouted over the din, covering her face with a fold of her cloak.
Keep watch in the main tunnel!
Gratefully, Bruckner and Tadalak retreated to the larger cavern, where the air was not so thick with troll smoke. Ducking low into the smoke, Nima investigated the cavern that had held the trolls. It looked to be a natural offshoot of the main cave. Thick stalactites hung from the ceiling 20 feet above, dripping at regular intervals. The space was about 45 feet wide, which made it a very cramped prison indeed for 4 massive trolls. The thick chains that had recently held the escaped beast now lay idly on the floor, except, of course, in the case of the final troll, who was still trussed up, his body a mass now of smoking and singed flesh, twisting and spasming and sagging against its constraints. Nima found that the far wall ended about 50 feet back, apparently a dead end. As she drew closer, however, the inferno cast by the candle of the troll revealed an alcove to the right rear of the cave, about 2 feet deep. Slumped on the ground in this small cranny was a corpse. The body of a human male, it was dressed in light but well-crafted leather armor. A long dagger with a curved handle jutted out from his belt. He was not long dead, certainly no more than a week or 2. He had begun to decay, but his features were still largely intact. Dull red hair hung over eyelids with delicate, almost feminine lashes. His strong chin was split open, his lower jaw cleft nearly in half, resting upon his breast in a slick of thick, coagulated blood. Opposite the knife on his belt sat a leather purse. A pack was upon his back. The purse contained several dozen gold pieces of exotic mint that Nima did not recognize. On one side they displayed a hand wrapped up in a fist, with esoteric symbols carved or tattooed onto it. On the obverse side was an inverted mountain, hanging large and imposing over a small landscape dotted with villages. The level of details on the coin was incredible. The longer Nima looked at them, the more she seemed to see. The troll's death knell brought her out of her reverie. She stowed the purse and began looking through the dead man's pack. She found a small leather book bound with a clasp and some traveling basics, 2 torches, a bedroll, a change of clothes, 2 glass vials filled with red liquid, a flint and steel, a whetstone, rations, and so forth. She also found a curious sphere forged of a pale whitish metal. Carved across it was a word in a foreign alphabet. Nima returned to her companions, displaying what she had found.
We can distribute the gold later. Do either of you know what is in these bottles?
Tadalak piped up.
Ox could try drinking one, and that would show us.
He began to giggle. Still chuckling at his own joke, Tadalak took one of the bottles and pulled the cork, sniffing at the crimson liquid. He hesitated, then tasted the bottom of the stopper.
These are healing potions,
he said after a moment.
The magic is of a strain unknown to me, but I can tell its function. They're definitely good for you.
Tadalak also took the small book that Nima had found and began briefly perusing it.
What is the book, Tadalak?
The gnome held up a hand, indicating patience. His eyes were darting across the page. Nima spoke into the silence.
Does anyone know what this is?
She held up the curious sphere she had found. Bruckner took it, turned it over in his hands, and shrugged.
We should keep moving. Anything of interest, Tadalak?
Well, it's difficult to be certain, but I think it's a journal of some kind. It's written in Tevianite Elvish, but it doesn't make any sense. It must be in a cipher. Luckily, Tadalak can read Tevianite. I bet little sister can too. But it may take us some time to figure out this poor fellow's code or shorthand. Or maybe he was a loon. Yeah, we'll work on it later.
He tucked the book into his pack.
What do you have there?
He asked Nima, reaching for the small stone globe. She handed it over and he considered it.
What is this word? The alphabet, it's all wrong. Oh, wait, is this the Danduric script? Well, I don't know this language, if it is one, but if the ispil is shaded and we treat this as the ordaining syllable, Kuruva Force.
Tadalak gave voice to the symbols uncertainly. Suddenly, a ghostly claw appeared in the air. 4 long talons of smoke and fog stretched wide about the orb within Tadalak's hand, then snapped closed around it, clutching it fast.
Dander snaps!
Tadalak yelped, dropping the stone. It hung suspended in the air.
Oh!
Tadalak clapped his hands in excitement. Nima drew her dagger and approached, tapping the stone from a distance. The blade rang dully and the sphere did not move. She sheathed her knife and grabbed the stone, ignoring the ephemeral fingers about it. The others simply watched, open-mouthed. She grasped it and pulled. She may as well have tried to pull the tunnel wall over a few paces. It would not budge.
The word has changed,
she announced. She took a stab at sounding out the odd collection of characters, following Tadalak's treatment of the letters.
Phenylphosphate.
she hazarded. The sphere fell from where it hung. Tadalak caught it before it hit the ground.
Neat. You speak the word and the sphere can't be moved.
Mind if I keep this?
Nima asked, stowing the ball in her pack.
Sure, Nima,
Tadalak said cheerfully.
I know Tevianite also. Let me know if I can be of help with the journal. As for the sphere, Nima, you're welcome to the unnatural thing. Shall we proceed into the dark?
Let's go find that rascal king.
This has been episode 4 of Greenleaf and the Black Blade. Written, narrated, and edited by Andrew Israelsen. Additional voices by Jared Israelsen and Penny James. Music by Patrick Grafton-Cardwell. Tune in next time.